All around us, the world is built on the back of tradesmen. The world is built by the hammer and with the auger. The busy lives of each woman and man are facilitated by a tradesman's works. Let's tell the stories of these quiet heroes and celebrate their efforts. My name is Zach Ciota, and this is The Tradesman. One of the reasons I wanted to start doing this podcast is because I wanted to be able to give back to my fellow tradesmen in a way that I thought I could be productive. I could give them something worthwhile. Because I think that I have a lot of guys that come up to me and ask me questions about the trade, whether it be technical or business in nature. And I have to tell a lot of them that they came to the wrong guy. Now, technical questions in my arena, HVAC, some electrical, I can answer those questions and help them out. But I really feel bad for the guys who come to me to talk business, because that is my weak point. And you might say, wow, then why are you running a business? There's a lot of reasons I run a business. And it's not because I'm such a great business guy. It's better for me, with what I have going on personally, to run a business. I need freedom, basically to take care of my family in a way that is a little bit atypical. But unfortunately, as far as business, is counting dollars, figuring out where everything goes, staying on top of the books, staying on top of scheduling, I really am not the best. I'm not the guy to talk to about that. There's so many better businessmen out there. My buddy John Israel interviewed Greg Fox, a relatively new business owner, who's been owning his business, who has owned his business for about a year and a half. He's done very well. We marveled at the fact that he had multiple trucks on the road, even though he's only been in business for a year and a half. It's impressive. I was talking to him, being my buddy John, not Greg. I was like, wow, I've been out here for 8 years, and I have half a truck. I don't have 4 trucks. I don't even have 1 truck. I have an F-350 with bad brakes. I have an F-350, which I don't even drive to work right now. I'm driving a minivan. Believe it or not, I'm driving a Dodge minivan to work. I actually love it. So the next time that any of you who listen to this podcast, who might be familiar with me through YouTube or some other venue, maybe the Cowboys podcast or the Working Joe's podcast, next time you guys think about asking me a business question, just remember you're asking a guy that drives a minivan to work, doesn't even have a formal scheduling program, and bills everybody with Square. So that should stop you in your tracks right there. If you want to ask me the superheat formula, go ahead. If you want to ask me why your refrigeration pressures are a certain number, why your superheat's a certain number, what I think the problem is with a heat pump, I'm golden there. I'll help you out the best I can there, and chances are I can help you with that. But when it goes onto the business side, you're looking at a delinquent, and I'm sorry. So I wanted to start this podcast because I feel like I can give back, and not just with my personal knowledge, because that's limited, but I feel like I can present our guests in a way that you'll enjoy listening to them. We have 2 great guests today. Rob is returning to talk more about arc flashes, because it's a fascinating subject, and it's something that all of us need to be aware of. Throughout any trade, we're going to run into electrical issues. You may not work on them directly, but it would be great if you were aware of them. It's fascinating. Listening to Rob say that there are levels of danger that you can't prepare for. Now stay tuned, he's going to say that. There are levels of danger that are unable to be countermeasured. It's scary stuff. Guys have to work on this stuff. Now thank goodness a lot of us don't have to work on that. We also have another guest, Mr. Curtis Bowers. A few of you might know him from YouTube. He was also part of the Bowers House podcast. It's on hiatus because one half of the podcast, Chris Greathouse, who will also be on the show eventually, was so slammed, he started a new company. He's growing really big. If you have a business question, you could ask Chris Greathouse. But he grew so quickly and so big that he was unable to continue the podcast. So Curtis Bowers is going to get his podcast fix with me, and we're going to talk about none other than his brand of choice, HVAC equipment, which is Ameristar. Now that ought to pique your interest, because if you know about Ameristar, which a lot of you probably don't, you either love it or hate it. So Curtis is going to talk about Ameristar. It ought to be a lot of fun. In fact, let's go ahead and get right into Curtis. He's going to tell us all about Ameristar, and I'll catch up with you guys on the flip side. Tell us a little bit about Ameristar first, because no one knows about it except for a few guys know a lot about it, which is you. So tell everybody else that doesn't know that it exists, what it is.
All right. Ameristar, back, I'm going to say, in either the late 90s or the early 2000s, was basically, it was an American Standard outdoor condenser. They didn't have an air handler. It was just an outdoor condenser that was the American Standard brand unit. Looked just like an American Standard, but in the top right corner, it just had a badge that said Ameristar. I don't know about when they dropped the line. I'm going to probably say early 2000s. They dropped the line. And, they just started selling Trane and American Standard. Well, 2012, they brought in this new, the Ameristar brand again to compete with, just let's be honest, to compete with Goodman.
Goodman, yeah.
Goodman. And it's not that, Ameristar's a bad unit, but
like Goodman, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not. Right. I wasn't trying to be, that blunt, but yes, it's not as bad as Goodman, okay? But if you put in Goodman, hey, more power to you. That's your fault, nobody else's.
That's your fault. That's your bad life decisions. All right.
So when they brought the Ameristar line over to compete with Goodman, the air handlers and the heat pumps are from China. So that's where, they can get a good price from them. But the furnaces, the gas furnaces, are an unbadged American Standard furnace. And when I say unbadged, it's just a basic furnace, no color to it. It's just, metal cabinet, blah. That's it. I started putting them in 2013. My father had put a couple of them in. I helped him put a couple of them in. And then I gave a price on a rental property, put it in, liked the equipment, got little, there were some things that had to be done to it. Number one, the first generation had no badging on the heat pump or the air handler. It was just a unit. It didn't even say Ameristar on it. It didn't have the heat pumps didn't have a true suction port on them. There was no real way to get your suction in the wintertime. That was their first generation. Plus the defrost boards were just generic. I didn't have a lot of failures with the defrost boards, but compared to what they are now, it's like going from a Walkman to an iPod. Just the short 3 or 4 years that they've been selling them in this country. I put my first one in, had a lot of success, liked it, sold a few more, and just over the past, since 2013, I've put probably 30 of them in. They've gotten better every single time I put, one in. It's just the design has gotten better. It's a tough air handler. It's built tough. The heat pumps are built tough too. If you're putting them in an attic, you're gonna end up taking it, apart all the way.
I know. I installed one in the attic by myself, and I didn't have to take it apart all the way because the cabinet. Yeah. I don't know. Whereas like your Goodman, you're saying, has a really thin door and thin cabinet. The Ameristar is built out of the same stuff USS aircraft carriers are built out of, evidently, because it's like a 100-pound cabinet.
Yeah, it's a tough even with the blower and the coil out, it's heavy. It truly is. The only thing I can say is on the air handler and the heat pumps, or even straight ACs, the screws. I don't know where the hell they get these screws, but in the last few years, I've had to transition to using a Phillips chuck. When taking the door off and stuff,
Right.
because if you use a quarter-inch chuck, it's going to either round off the screw or round off the chuck.
Yes,
It
we had a
depends.
running joke for a long time in our hangouts about the screws. In fact, it spanned what I think was a solid year before our good buddy Justin Gonzalez went off to sell Kias in Florida. He was the main advocate for telling everybody that the Ameristar screw was the bane of everybody's existence.
Yeah, the dreaded 7 millimeter screw.
Yeah, no, too small for 5/16, too big for a quarter. You're basically. I think he said that he took his channel locks and tried to rip the door off that way.
Ah,
But these are
I
small
mean,
things that you're talking about. That's small stuff. I mean, what about the big
yeah.
stuff? I mean, what's the big stuff like? The compressors and the coils. How have they done?
The compressors have held up. If you actually look inside these things, the way they've got the new heat pump set up and the way the new defrost board and everything is set up, basically how it's designed is the compressor, sits in the center. You've got a suction accumulator like most heat pumps do, but the good thing Ameristar has on their heat pump is they actually don't have the accumulator right on the bottom of the cabinet. They actually got it lifted up at least 2 inches, and there's like a bracket that attaches to it, and it screws to the bottom of the cabinet, and it's actually up off the bottom 2 inches because like we all have problems with leaking systems. Most of the time it comes from the bottom of the accumulator because it sits on the bottom of the cabinet and rusts through.
Yeah.
Not with this. It's lifted 2 inches up. The sensors, if you ever have to work on them, okay, if you ever have an issue, and Zach, this goes for you too. This is how the sensors are set up. You've got your high pressure, your low pressure. You've got a coil temperature sensor. Actually, you've got two sensors. You've got one on the inside of the cabinet or on the coil itself, and then you've got one on the inside of the service panel.
Right.
Then you've got a discharge temperature sensor. All right. Now here's the funky thing. All these sensors are in series. Okay. They're not separate. They're all in series. And you've got coming off the defrost board, you've got a black plug and a white plug, and that's how they're separated. The black plug side is for your suction, and the white side is for your liquid end of the sensors. So you can test them that way. I actually had an issue with a unit, not something I installed, but another Ameristar that I'm doing some warranty work on, and it was giving me some frustration. And I actually had to talk to our tech rep through American Standard and Ameristar, and he's actually got the defrost board set up on his desk, and he's got power running through it where he can talk you through how to troubleshoot it. And we were able to confirm through him that it was a discharge temperature sensor that was tripping out. It's supposed to trip out at 275 degrees, and it would trip out at 90 degrees. And then,
Wow.
yeah, it would trip out at 90. And then when the discharge line off the compressor would reach 86 degrees, it would pull the contactor back in, reach 90, trip off again. It would continuously trip off, and then it would flash the 3-flash code, which is a hot gas sensor. It's not a hot gas sensor. I don't understand. There's no hot gas sensor on the unit unless you're talking about your high pressure switch. The low pressure switch wouldn't trip, and it wouldn't have tripped at the high pressure, but it was tripping on the discharge pressure sensor. They're always closed. As soon as it tripped off, I unplugged it, checked it, and it was open for 2 seconds, and then it would close. So it was like a split. I mean, you had to be right on it to catch it, but I was able to catch it. It took me a month to catch this problem. I mean,
Wow.
that's how. Yeah, it was the most funkiest thing. But once I got it figured out and changed it, which is a 5 minute change. I mean, it's right off the top of the compressor. You run it right back to the defrost board, plug it in, and it ran like a charm. As far as troubleshooting, they're not really. If you ever come across them, that's what you're going to have to run into. The all the pressure, the temperature, the pressure sensors rather, are all in series. So you've got to, and it's in the book. You've got to have a book with you, the installer book, or have access. Yeah, or
A
have
book.
access. Yeah, or you need to go on to ameristarhvac.com. They'll actually have all the documents for every single piece of equipment that's out there.
So we've troubleshooted the defrost board of the Ameristar heat pump now. We know a lot
Mhm.
about it. So, and I'm kind of looking at the website right now. So what I can tell from, I've already set a few of these myself. I've never set the furnace, which looks like a train, like you're saying.
Yes.
And the Ameristar, they have an over and under, which looks like the train as well. And everything else is separate. Looks like Ameristar to me. Just their own particular thing. Is that right?
Yeah. Are you talking about the package units?
Yeah, I see they have an over and under packaging like Train in American Standard is made for the last,
Uh,
I don't know, a long time.
Yeah, yeah. Ameristar heat pump package units. Well, if you look at how you do them, install them, they're long ways. They're not going to be close to the house. They're going to be kind of, instead of going left to right with the pad, you're going to go front to back.
I got you. Okay.
So they're a little longer. That's how they're set up. I don't like the design, but it is what it is.
Nobody asks us.
I know down south they install a lot of package units. So if they're listening to this and you get a chance to install one, that's the thing.
Single phase power only, and it looks like the heat pumps are horizontal only, and the gas electric units are convertible. And you have scroll compressors throughout, except for on the 2-ton versions of each, you have a rotary compressor, is what it says.
I wouldn't don't listen to that. They're all Copeland. Every last damn one of them are Copeland.
I don't, Curtis. The interweb says they're rotary.
Interweb.
I checked on this. I looked up the interweb on other parts of the interweb, and it said it was very truthful what it says.
Well, I've installed a lot of 2 tons, and they look like Copelands to me. I mean, they're quiet. They're not as loud. Those damn rotaries are loud. They seem like they're Copeland.
They probably are. I don't know. It's like, Goodman. The running thing with Goodman was that the smaller units will have rotaries in them, and the guys will say that if you go to the Goodman place and they're putting compressors in the unit, they just pick up from a big pile of compressors that are random types and sizes and put them into their units. Whether it be a scroll, you get a reciprocator, you get a rotary. You never know. It's like spinning the wheel of destiny. You don't know what you're going to receive at the end. You can get a rotary and be like, "Hey, enjoy your rotary," just like a window air conditioner. Like, I thought I bought Central Air.
Well, I can tell you, I can now. As far as the furnaces go, now those things have come a long way since they first brought them on the scene. I just put in. I've done 2 of the 2-stage variable speed furnaces. 95%. Actually, they're 96% efficient. And one of the reasons I'm using those Ameristar 2-stage variable speed furnaces is because American Standard is getting rid of all their gas furnace line except for their design, their old style design, except for their basic 95%. These are only 95s, not 80%ers. The 95% with the PSC blower motor. They're getting rid of the X13 and the old design with the variable speed. They're going to go to their new variable speed modulating design that just looks, it's ugly. I'll just be straight up and honest. It's an ugly design. I don't like it, but it is what it is. It's got the same.
I was going to say, at least it's not plastic, right?
Well, no, it can't be
Much on the
plastic.
floor.
Oh hell no! It can't be plastic. It'll melt to the floor. But it's got that same beautiful plastic color.
Oh no! I was wondering if those new air handlers will be built and you see Yeti written on the side or something like that. Should
Yeah.
be nice.
Well,
Just take the little
the
hinges
only-
off and boom, everything's right there.
Well, the only thing I can say about the furnace is it's a 36-inch tall furnace. So that's They say you save 4 inches, but when does 4 inches really matter on a gas furnace? Really?
When does
So
4 inches matter? I'm not going to say anything. That's fine. I mean, I know a lot of guys who have a big problem with that statement.
well, take it for what it is. 4 inches doesn't matter when it comes to gas furnaces, in my opinion.
Curtis will be back. Curtis will be back to talk about other subjects, but I wanted to ask him. He was telling me about his Ameristar nightmare, and of course, we have to talk about that for just a minute. So, why don't you
Yeah.
talk about your Ameristar nightmare?
Okay, the only Ameristar nightmare I have, and it's a doozy. I put a system in. It was their second generation back in December of 2013. The house was sold, and the new owner called me, and I went over to look at it, and it was October of last year. The unit was flat on charge, and I was just like, what the hell? So, um, I got the sniffer out, went to the indoor unit first thing, and boom, I hit on the coil. So I said, all right, so let's change the coil out, pull a vacuum, do the thing, and we'll get her going. Changed it out under warranty. The unit was like, right at 3 years old. What the hey, we'll do it. Gets going, gets running. He calls me 2 weeks ago. Says he's been gone since May, but it's hot out and the unit's not cooling. I said, okay. So I go check it out, turn it on, put the gauges on it, and damn it, if it's not low on charge again.
What?
Yeah, and the thing is I pulled a hell of a good vacuum on this unit. I come back the next day and I put almost 7 pounds of 410 in him to get him going.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a 3-ton system, so I put 6 pounds 14 ounces.
Wow.
This time I'm not even going to get the sniffer out. I'm going to put dye in it, and I'm going to go through it like a bloodhound. I'm going to check the indoor coil. I'm going to check the line set because I reused the existing line set. I'm going to check the existing line set going all the way outside to the heat pump. Hell, I'm even going to check the heat pump coil. It might be something in the heat pump. When I pulled a vacuum, it pulled into the microns and it held like a boss. So I know it held a good tight vacuum.
Right.
And if it is that indoor coil, I'm going to be pissed. So I'm just hoping it's not, and it's something else.
Yeah.
But
Whatever it is can't be good, though.
no. I mean, I've heard horror stories about guys that have put the Ameristars in and have had issues with their indoor coils. And I'd only had one issue. I'm hoping to good graces that I don't have any more because I love the piece of equipment. It's a good piece of equipment. I know you put a couple in, Zach. So
I have.
you know
100% success rate.
for a basic builder grade, I mean they're good equipment, but that's my nightmare.
Curtis's nightmare will continue. And what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. Since Curtis has talked to us about his nightmare, he's explained Ameristar. He likes the brand. Overall, he's had success with it, despite this latest ordeal he's gone through. We're going to bring him back after he finds out the problem. Even if you only come in for like 5 or 10 minutes on one of the other podcasts, you can tell us that the problem is resolved or that you have, dragged the entire system into the yard, sprayed gas on it, lit it on fire, and danced around it, saying so long, you awful, awful SOB.
Well, it's possible that I may end up doing that in the next couple of years because the homeowner is interested in an inverter.
Wow. Wait a second. Hold on a second. Before we put a nail in this sucker right here. You sold them an Ameristar unit, and now they are looking to buy an inverter? Did they win the lottery?
No, I sold the Ameristar to the guy who used to live in the house. He wanted to sell it. He just needed something new. It was a 1982 Rheem air handler on a 1998 with a 1998 10th year Rheem heat pump. So I put a 13 SEER, 3-ton Ameristar air handler and heat pump on the house. He sold it eventually, like 2 years later. Now the new homeowner is interested in upgrading to an inverter. Not this year, possibly next year. So,
Hey, did you tell him you sold Train? Because he know what kind of investment that's going to be.
I told him I sold American Standard,
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
and I gave him a price because I don't want to get into the whole Train. No, no, I'm
Now,
not.
we can save that for a different day. You're going to sell him an was it XV18 or XV20? Is that their brand?
Going to do. I gave him a price on doing a TEM8, the metal, because I will not put I will not put a plastic air handler in. I sold him the new TEM8 communicating metal cabinet style air handler with a I guess it's an XV20 SEER heat pump inverter, and it was the price was up there. It was up there. Trust me, it was up there.
I bet it was. I bet
So
it was.
and when I gave him the price, he didn't flinch. He said, "Okay, that's fine." If he said, "Won't be this year, but maybe next year."
Yeah,
I said,
yeah. He had to double check and make sure the decimal was in the right spot. Well, let me put my car on the market, and then we'll see what we can do about this. I don't know. I got to rent out a couple rooms, find some college students.
Well, he was at his sister's house in Wisconsin, and she was having ICP inverters being put in. It had you can actually see what the pressures were on the board. He wanted that, and I told him, well, I can't get that, but I can do American Standard inverter. It's the same thing, but you won't be able to. You won't have the board, but you can read it through the thermostat.
That's the goal right there. And now we have so many things to talk with Curtis about when he comes back. We're going to talk, I guess, next year about this inverter. Of course, Curtis will be wearing a fur coat, have some, nice Ray-Ban sunglasses on when he comes back in. The job went great, man. The job went great. Still living up there in the middle of the country? No, we live on the beach, brother.
Shit. I should have told him it's against my religion to sell inverters, but.
Oh man, were you gonna have to bring on mission control when you go on service calls? You know that, right? You're gonna be in there like, we got 7 blinking lights, 3 blinking blue lights, 3 blinking red lights.
I got you, Zach. I don't need mission control.
Oh man, I feel sorry for you, man. I'm gonna have to forward my number. Oh dear, I'm gonna forward to Ameristar. It'll be a vicious circle. But yep, there's Curtis Bowers. Everybody, we'll talk to him again soon. Talk to him about inverters. Oh yeah, man, we enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Let's have a little bit of break now. We talked to Curtis. Good interview. Learned a little bit about Ameristar. Got a little bit into the mind of Curtis. Didn't go so far that we got trapped and couldn't get out again, which is a danger. I think at about 25 or 30 minutes of talking to Curtis, you reached a point of no return. I think he would agree with that. So we learned a little bit about Ameristar, went over some service call stuff. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. And we're going to talk to my own daughter here about how she perceives her dad in this trade. Guys, I am sitting here with one of my best helpers in the world, my daughter, Mallory.
Hey, guys.
Mallory's going to talk with you guys a few minutes because a lot of you guys have daughters and sons out there, and I don't know what they think of our trade because I'm an HVAC technician, company owner. So I'm going to have you listen to what Mallory thinks that's all about. Mallory, tell them when I go out to work on HVAC equipment, heating and air conditioning equipment.
I know.
Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
I know.
Oh, HVAC. What do you think goes on when I leave this house? Where do you think I'm going? What do you think I'm doing?
I think you're going to people's houses or churches or a building and seeing what's wrong with it, and then if it's like a big problem, you wait till the next day to fix it. But if it's like a little small problem, you can handle it that day.
That's right. I'll go. Do you know any types of problems that I've fixed in the past? Do you know what any of the parts are called?
A compressor?
Compressor. What else you got?
I got
You got the big one.
ventilation. Ventilation.
What? Installation, ventilation? What is that? Insta-lilla-villa-villa-buddha? No, I don't know what that is. Insta-villa-bida-buddha? No, I don't. I never fixed my... Ventilation. I have ventilated stuff before. I ventilate people's bathrooms so they can toot in there and the air will flow out of there. That's good, right?
Yes.
So they don't have to sit in their own filth.
Okay,
That's nice.
Let's get to the next question.
Let's go to the next question. All right. Now, what is the latest your dad has ever come home from working on people's air conditioners?
That I can remember is about, because I remember this was when he was doing service calls, like installing the air conditioners. He didn't get home until about 9:30.
9:30. That's right.
That
Would
was
you
like
believe
2 years
that
ago.
I've gotten home at like 11:30 before too? You must not have remembered
Yes,
that.
I would.
Do you know that I did a job in the middle of the night one time?
I would think that. I don't think you would, but I would think that.
There's a special reason why I had to do that.
Because it was family?
No, it wasn't. Because if it was family, I'd tell them to wait till the morning. I'd tell them that,
There's a baby involved?
There's no babies. It was actually on top of a restaurant. In the middle of the night, they were remodeling the restaurant, and one of their big air conditioners, I mean the big one that does the whole kitchen, was down. Do you know what restaurant that was? It's one of our favorites.
Texas Roadhouse?
I wish. I would have gone and got free food or something. I'd have been like, no. I would like, what is that thing? I would like some bread to go, is what I would tell them.
Okay,
No.
so which one was it?
It was McDonald's. The system was,
okay.
for you guys out there that know more about HVAC, it was a 20-ton Lennox unit, and one of the compressors, the crankcase heaters,
That's
which
big.
they keep the compressors warm, it had rubbed a hole in one of the copper lines and all the refrigerant came out. So I had to go fix it in the middle of the
I
night.
don't know how that's wrong, but oh my gosh.
Well, let's see. What else do we have?
Oh wait, refrigeration. Oh, okay.
Refrigeration. Do I do refrigeration?
Yes.
I do
You have
not.
this
I do not
tank.
do refrigeration. You don't know anything. You don't know your own father. I do not do refrigeration. I do HVAC, but there is no R.
I know your birthday's on August 15th.
That's right, guys. My birthday is on August 15th, which is coming up, or it's almost here if this makes it to the next podcast. If it doesn't, then it's past, and you guys missed the boat. But we'll give you an address to mail all my presents to if y'all need to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, give them presents. This
No, I don't mean copies, DVD copies of Descendants 2 either, Mallory.
yeah, do that.
Okay, what else can we ask? Let's see.
Oh, I
Now, let me ask you something else. You know, Dad, as time has gone by, I do only service now. I don't do installs anymore. So I'm around a little bit more, and I do more podcasting. Do you like it that Dad's home, or would you rather me get lost?
I like that you're at home because when you're doing podcasts with Ralph, I get to jump in because it's you and Ralph.
That's
so I
right. A
can
lot
do
of
it.
times, not during the podcast typically, but after the podcast when me and Ralph are talking,
Well,
Mallory
one-
will come in.
Yeah, and one time we had Brent on it, remember?
That's Brent Ridley was on there too. That's correct.
Yeah, that was fun.
It's fun. It is a lot of fun. You've busted in there when me and John are podcasting too.
Yeah.
The Cowboys of HVAC.
Da-da-da.
All right, Mallory. Well, we spent our 4 or 5 minutes here. Looks like we're counting up right around 5 minutes. Why don't you tell everybody bye?
Bye, guys.
Mallory really is a great girl. She's very smart, very intelligent for her age. She's only 10 years old, and she's the only one of my children that are really willing to come on here and talk. Mallory has a twin brother, and he could care less about this. I could get him in the room by telling him we're going to watch a Minecraft video, but that would be as far as it goes. When he realized we were on a podcast about HVAC tradesmen, he would turn and run. And my teenage son, Andrew, doesn't actually speak enough to fill up a podcast. He probably couldn't fill up one podcast in a year's worth of talking. Most of his words are, yeah, That's basically what we get out of him. So it's great to have Mallory come in here. She's so outgoing. Mallory is what I call my buffer. When we go out into public, I am not a social person. Despite having a podcast, multiple podcasts, YouTube channels, interacting with people online, overall, I'm not a very social person. Mallory is social enough for 100 people. So when we go out in public, she's my buffer. She go talk to everybody, keep them busy, and I can just sit back and relax. So I want to thank her, and we'll have her back on. We'll ask her some more questions, see what she says. Let's get right over to Rob, though. Rob's going to tell us about arc flashes, tell us how to be prepared for arc flashes, exactly what they are, Just know some of the particulars about them, because any bit of knowledge we have, even if we're not going to run into anything very dangerous, even if we're not exposed to high voltage, high amperage electrical panels and equipment, we can still get some knowledge out of this we can transfer over to our regular careers and trades. So let's listen to Rob. We'll go into part 2 on arc flash. I watched some arc flash stuff.
Did you watch some videos and stuff? Yeah.
I did. I watched some guys get zapped and what I could only describe as being vaporized, along with some of the materials around them. And I watched a video by Fluke that was very informative about how it happens, different kinds of flashes, how long they last, and how they can stop or continue going until basically overcurrent cuts the circuit.
Right.
And I guess that's pretty much what they said. It was going to last as long as the power was on, basically.
Right. Exactly. So,
yep. You've seen it more than I have. I mean, what is your understanding of what arc flash is, and what do you do to? Well, we'll break it up into how you prevent it, but kind of define arc flash for us.
Well, an arc flash, there's a couple different terms for it. Well, I'll explain what an arc flash is. An arc flash is basically a short circuit in an electrical panel or an electrical control. Basically, two lines. If you have a 3-phase panel, 2 phases cross, boom, you have an arc flash explosion. So it's something you don't want to be in front of, especially depending on the voltage. So that's why a lot of companies, especially when you're working in the commercial, industrial fields, you have to take special training to work on this type of electrical equipment. And then electricity is in HVAC, and every single piece of equipment is electrical. We don't have anything that does not use electricity to provide cooling or heating. I don't know any. Do you?
No, not any of my stuff anyway.
Right. That's why it is so important to practice the safety when you're working on this equipment when it's energized. That's the other thing. Arc flash safety you have to take into consideration when the piece of equipment is energized. When the equipment is de-energized, the arc flash safety is gone. There's no reason to worry about an arc flash because there is no electrical energy to have an arc flash happen. So there's no way that anything can short. That electricity power source is gone. So we only worry about arc flash when the piece of equipment you're working on is energized. I like to stress that also, because you don't have to be all gloved up or suited up, have your face shield on and everything when the equipment's not energized. So
right. That goes back to what you were talking about last week. That's why you have the tick tracer to sort of do that preliminary test. Then you verify you verify with whatever meter you're using that the power is offline, and then you can kind of move past that danger and, like you say, disrobe from the helmet or the gloves or whatever. Is that correct?
Right, exactly. That's exactly correct. To go into it further, I kind of want to discuss this too. What OSHA actually does not regulate arc flash. The governing body that regulates arc flash is actually the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association. And they are under OSHA, NFPA 70E. That's the government designation under it. Under there, if you go into OSHA and look at that, and under the National Fire Protection, that is the bylaws and all the instructions of what arc flash is and how to protect yourself from it. In OSHA terms and through the National Fire Protection Association. And the reason why it's under that is because it becomes a fire hazard. So it's really not it is a safety hazard under OSHA, but once it becomes an arc and it actually creates a fire, then that goes under the Fire Protection Association. So I wanted to stress it too, because if guys are looking for OSHA, and they don't find this, where's this arc flash in here? Well, you're looking in the wrong spot. You got to look in the National Fire Protection Association. What they do is, depending on pieces of equipment you're working on, they do what's called an arc flash study. So depending on the size of that piece of equipment, if you're working on a gigantic chiller, 2,000 ton chiller. Okay, that's using a lot of electricity. That will have an arc flash study done on that. So what an arc flash study is, it's also referred to as an arc flash analysis. It's an on-site study at the facility. It's conducted by trained, qualified personnel, to evaluate that system. And then what they do is they note all the risks that are involved in working on that piece of equipment, and they then have a safety perimeter when you're working on that piece of equipment. What needs to be worn, what type of class arc flash it is, because there are different classes of arc flash. Going from the very small arc flash all the way up to the ones that they can't even classify. No suit will protect you from it. Those risks are all evaluated in that arc flash study. So normally when you're working on, say, a piece of commercial equipment that we're working on, say, at Home Depot, or you're working on at your local bank or something like that, or your local residential house, they won't have an arc flash study. But when you work in big facilities and the guys that work on these big pieces of equipment, those will have an arc flash study done on them already. So you'll already know what you're walking into and what needs to be done beforehand before you even work on this piece of equipment.
So you're saying that if you have this large piece of equipment, they'll actually have a boundary that once you pass through a boundary, if you don't suit up, you're in danger of, interacting with whatever catastrophe could happen.
That is correct, yes.
What is the typical boundary for one of these flashes? What you're used to as far as what you've seen in the past? I mean, how far do they reach?
They can reach, probably in the facilities I've worked in, you usually have a 15 to 20 foot perimeter when you're working on these pieces of equipment energized. But like I said, the bigger the piece of equipment, the bigger the voltage, the bigger the amperage, the wider the arc will be. The safety arc. Usually you'll have I call it an arc. They call it a perimeter, but it's basically like a taped off area. In a half circle or something around that area. There are also other pieces of equipment, like I said, that they've done studies on it where there is no safe way to work on it. The energy is so great that if you're trying to work on it energized and something happens, there's no suit, no face shield, no gloves that will protect you from that arc flash. So say like at a power plant, for example, if you're working on like the Hoover Dam or something like that, you're working on a transformer or something like that where you can't shut it down, because if you shut it down, you shut the whole city down. Places like that, they've done studies where there is no protection for you. If something happens, you're going to die.
That's incredible. That's something like hydroelectric facilities,
Right.
because your power is being churned basically by whatever body of water, stream, or whatever you have going, and the stream's not going to stop. So there must
Right.
be some point in which you have no protection, like you're talking about. That's a scary thought right there.
Right, exactly. I learned that in the class that that I took, and I was like, wow, I never even thought about that. But they said, yeah, there's classifications where you have no protection whatsoever. So it's some scary stuff. But like I said, the majority of us in HVAC won't be working at a hydroelectric plant or a power plant. But it's nice just to kind of talk about it so guys have an idea of the extraordinary circumstances and that can happen, and it happens very quickly, or you can get injured or you'll most likely be killed.
That's what I was reading. I was watching some videos, or it's staggering what it looks like. Just the flashes of light. The guys basically, you're toast to not think of a better word. I mean, that's what the guy looks like. So the temperatures can be 35,000 degrees, and basically this was a fluke video. They said it was 4 times hotter than the surface of the sun. It would vaporize aluminum. It would vaporize steel. And the interesting thing that I read was that if you have copper, it'll actually sustain the arc. I guess because of the conductivity. I'm not sure. It didn't say why, but it will actually sustain the arc and kind of intensify it just until the power is cut, or hopefully your power gets cut. There's no issue with a fail-safe with overcurrent protection, or else I guess you're just dead. There's no way around it.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's not something that's forgiving at all. Any type of electrical injury is not forgiving. Whether you're get a shock from a wall outlet, or you're working on a piece of equipment that's 3-phase and you get zapped with 208. Any type of electrical shock or burn is very unforgiving. It's very painful. A lot of times can be deadly.
Let's talk about thresholds for having this sort of protection. When we get into arc flashes, where should we start thinking about it? I think we touched on it last time. Like residential, you never hear about it. But what about 208 three-phase panels, 200, 400 amp panels? I mean, should you start worrying about arc flash there?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, if you're ever working in any type of panel, whether it be an electrical circuit panel or in any type of electrical control cabinet on a piece of HVAC equipment, when it is energized, you have that voltage and amperage. I mean, some of these HVAC units that are out there will pull 200 amps when they're running. I mean, these units that have 4 compressors, 6 compressors, 8 compressors in them, they're pulling a lot of amperage through them, especially on 208. A lot of those other ones are running 460 or 480. Once you have that type of amperage, that's why I talk about wearing your linesman's gloves, wearing the hard hat with the safety shield on it. They also have what's called I always say it wrong, but it's called a balaclava. If you ever see like race car drivers wear them and they put them over their head before they put their helmet on, it's like a fire shield kind of to protect your face. It only just has your eye openings on it.
I got you. Yeah.
So like if there is an arc flash, you have glasses over your eyes and a face shield, so that heat and everything won't burn your skin. That covering on you, won't take your hair off and stuff like that. That you're supposed to wear also along with your full coverall suit. But when you're working on lower voltage pieces of equipment, like I said, the minimum I always recommend is our linesman's gloves and a pair of safety glasses. We should all really be wearing safety glasses no matter what, especially when you're crawling in an attic or a crawl space. I mean, you don't know what's down there. Like I said, you have wires there, you have nails hanging out, hooks. You get a hook in the eye. I mean, you're gonna rip your eye out. Those kinds of things, can and do happen every single day.
There was 1,000 electrical injuries that I saw reported on this particular. I don't know if it was. I think it was nationwide, and it said 50% of them were arc flash injuries, and they had 5 or 6 every day. It seems like it was what it said. So this happens all the time. I mean, this is not something where this sort of happens every now and then, and some guy gets killed. I mean, it's happening every day. People are getting injured by this stuff. So it's really important.
Yes, it is.
Let's talk about like your electrical tools, screwdrivers, whatever you're using to work on. Should you have electrically rated tools? How far down should I go? Because I know I see guys with tools that are rated to sustain a certain bit of damage electrically. Not Harbor Freight screwdrivers. You have high dollar screwdrivers. Where should we start buying stuff like this? Should HVAC techs doing residential have this stuff? Should it start at commercial? How does that work?
I would definitely recommend it even for a residential tech to have insulated screwdrivers. Or that's what they're called, insulated tools. So, I mean, they sell insulated screwdrivers, pliers, channel locks. They sell all different kinds of tools that are insulated. Like I said, when you're working on a live piece of equipment, especially too if you're working in a piece of equipment where it has its own breaker in it. Okay, but you shut the breaker off, but everything below that breaker is still live. If you drop that tool and it hits the right way on that breaker, you're going to cross those 2 phases, and you're going to cause a short, and that's going to cause an arc flash. Insulated tools are definitely a must when you're working on any type of live equipment. How many times do we see a guy go and push in the contactor with his finger? How many guys do that? I mean, hasn't everybody done it at least once, right?
Absolutely.
What if your finger slips, boom, and you're pushing that contactor and you hit that contact? How many guys take a regular screwdriver, and stick it in there and push in the contactor to see if the unit's running? Take your insulated screwdriver and do that. It's a hell of a lot safer than it is using a regular tool. It's probably one of the biggest things that I see, and you see it on YouTube videos, you see it on Facebook, you see, you talk to guys who are talking about it. Yeah, I pushed the contactor in my finger and the unit doesn't work. Well, first off, what are you doing? I mean, you might, you know what I mean? That's like sticking your finger in a plug and seeing if it's got power to it. I mean,
man, that's exactly right. You're exactly right. I saw an electrician one time, and it blew my mind that he couldn't find the breaker for a piece of equipment. This is regular 240 single phase equipment. He took the wire loose from this piece of equipment, and he put the L1 and L2 together to trip the breaker. That's how he found the breaker. Just blows my mind.
That's crazy. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I've talked to that too, like where, electricians, oh yeah, when I was coming up with the journeyman that trained me or whatever, yeah, I used to get electrocuted all the time to find shorts and things like that. You just get used to it. I'm like thinking, you get used to it. What do you mean? That's not something you get an immunity to, The inside of your body is burning every time that you do that, I mean, you have voltage running through all your internal organs.
Why is that a badge of honor?
Yeah. I never understood that. Arc flash for us as technicians isn't as much, as an electrician who's actually, working in huge live panels. But like I said, we are still working on equipment that is energized from these panels, and we have huge, a lot of these pieces of equipment have huge control panels, So that's why I try and make sure to stress this to new and upcoming techs and even seasoned techs. Safety, safety, safety. Think about what you're doing first before you actually do it. Have a plan. Don't be complacent. Like a guy like me, I work on a lot of the same equipment all the time. Same facilities, same businesses, things like that. I work on a lot of this equipment repetitively, because a lot of it's older. A lot of it has things that goes wrong with it a lot, and people don't want to spend money to change it out. They want to fix it. So you can get complacent with these things. One of the things that I think that's the biggest killer of anything else is complacency, because you get to a point where, I've worked on this piece of equipment hundreds of times now, and you walk up to it and sometimes you think you even know when you get the call for it, you already know what's wrong with it. If you get out of that habit of complacency, if you think of every single job time you go and look at something, it's the first time you've done it, and you use some caution with a level head on your shoulders, hopefully you will not injure yourself, live to make it to the next call.
It's hard to believe that somebody like myself or one of you guys can go to work and not come home that day. We always assign that risk to somebody else, like a policeman or emergency personnel. But there's a lot of our guys that leave the house one morning, they have their coffee, they have their breakfast, they say bye to their kids, they say bye to their wife, and when they leave that day, they never return. And it may sound kind of intense, it may carry a lot of weight, but it deserves to carry a lot of weight when guys like Rob tell us the dangers from arc flash. We need to take heed and listen so that every single day we leave, we come home. That's one of the important things about this podcast. That's why I created The Tradesman. So we're well informed. We have a podcast we can listen to and learn. We can joke around like Curtis Bowers, our first interview. Much more lighthearted. Much more like you'd be talking to the guys at work. And we have Rob come in with a little bit of reality, but each one of those is important. We need to take heed of each one of them. Okay, guys, I'm not going to drag this on forever. I really appreciate you listening to this episode of The Tradesman, and I hope that you download this episode on Android. You can use Podcast Addict. Download it on your Apple phone with the podcast app. Support us any way you can. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it on Facebook. That's what helps me out the most, the downloads and share it on Facebook. I want this thing to grow, and if you guys think it's worth growing, you help me out and share it. We'll be back next Saturday with another episode. I'm not sure who's going to be on there just yet, but you can bet that I'm going to have you a full episode chock full of good information, a few laughs, and maybe some levity and some reality. So I hope to see you there. Thank you guys. I'll see you on the next one.